Welcome to the Deep Dive. This is where we take sources you provide and really pull out the key insights, like a shortcut to getting up to speed.
Yeah, exactly. And today, our mission, if you will, is pretty specific. Getting a handle on building generational wealth using Bitcoin.
Right. And to do that, we're digging into a YouTube conversation. It features Morgan Rochard.
Yeah.
She's a financial planner, but also a big Bitcoiner.
The source is the Bitcoin podcast with Walker, and it covers a lot of ground. Things like volatility, common mistakes people make, risk tolerance, inheritance, all that stuff.
And Morgan, she's not your typical advisor, been in finance since 2008. Started, interestingly, on the floor of the American Stock Exchange.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, she even tells this story about being the coffee girl and having to memorize all these fast orders.
Yeah.
It kind of gives you the sense she really understands the system from the inside out.
Totally. And what's really key here, I think, is that she's been advising clients specifically on Bitcoin since 2016.
Since 2016?
Yeah,
Wow.
yeah, like way before it was trendy for financial planners. So you should expect some really practical, grounded insights, mixing that traditional planning knowledge with a real understanding of Bitcoin for the long haul. Okay, let's jump in.
Let's do it. First up, volatility. That's always the elephant in the room with Bitcoin, isn't it?
Yeah.
Right now, what Bitcoin is hovering around $85,000, $87,000 as we record this, those swings can be pretty intense.
They really can. And Morgan pointed out something interesting. Even within the Bitcoin community, you see this impatience when prices shoot up and then like real anxiety when there's even a small dip, say 10%.
Yeah, I've seen that.
But her point is you got to have that long-term view, that low time preference thing people talk about. It lets you see dips not as, disasters, but maybe as chances to accumulate more if you're saving correctly.
Oh, I can definitely relate to that. Back in 2022 when it crashed to $16 K, man, after buying higher, that was rough.
Yeah.
But then, the thinking shifted. It became, okay, this is an opportunity to get Bitcoin at prices I might not see again.
Yeah.
It's about stacking those sats, right? Finding ways to save and just increase that number.
That experience you had really nails a key point Morgan makes, shifting how you measure value, moving away from obsessively checking the dollar price.
Yeah, the constant refreshing.
Right. And focusing instead on growing your stack, accumulating more sats. She admits, though, even for longtime Bitcoiners, it's hard to fully break that fiat mindset. We're just so immersed in it.
It's so true. Everything's priced in dollars or euros or whatever.
But if you can make that mental switch, thinking in Bitcoin terms, acting like a, responsible steward of your stack, it changes your perspective. It's less about short-term fiat gains and more about long-term value on the Bitcoin network.
So it really forces you to think differently about your holdings. Less about the day-to-day dollar value, more about the long game in sats.
And ultimately, she brings it back to your personal goals. That's the anchor. How does Bitcoin actually help you get where you want to go? Retirement, new business, kids' education, whatever it is. Aligning assets, including Bitcoin, with those things is the goal.
Okay, good point. Now, what about this idea? You hear it all the time. Bitcoin is inevitable.
Right, it's huge in the community. Morgan acknowledges that feeling, that sense of inevitability, but, and this is crucial, she points out the big question mark. When?
The timing.
Exactly. When will it fully play out? Could be years, could be decades, maybe sooner, who knows? That uncertainty is key.
Because if it hasn't fully happened yet, then arguably you're still early, right?
That's the implication, yeah. And she also highlights, very astutely, I think, how much human emotion and just regular market cycles drive the price. It's not always perfectly rational, even with big institutions involved now.
Yeah, definitely not always rational.
Yeah.
Makes you think about those past predictions, like 100K by 2025 and people arguing about leveraging up.
Right. And she also mentions the real world stuff happening, like El Salvador adopting it and potential future rule changes, like maybe a de minimis threshold for spending Bitcoin without instant tax hit.
Transactions, yeah.
Stuff like that could really make Bitcoin more integrated into everyday finance.
Okay, let's switch gears a bit. Bitcoin versus crypto. That distinction trips a lot of people up.
It really does. And Morgan shared something quite telling, I thought. She said most of her clients who hold Bitcoin, they don't really mess around much with other cryptocurrencies.
Interesting. Just that observation alone says something.
It does, and she explains why. She talks about the risks with altcoins. They're super unpredictable. Projects often fail to deliver. You've got pump and dumps.
Oh, yeah.
And some things that look, well, kind of like Ponzi schemes, honestly. It's a bit of a stark warning.
So her advice against big altcoin bets isn't just philosophical. It's tied directly to client goals.
Exactly. If you're saving for retirement or a down payment or future medical costs, the extreme speculation in most altcoins just doesn't fit. It doesn't align with those kinds of secure, long-term objectives.
I like that approach. Framing it around goals, not just saying that coin is bad,
Hmm.
seems more constructive.
Totally. And she even gets practical about it, like suggesting ways to handle existing altcoins you might want to offload, like maybe selling them over different tax years to manage the impact.
Smart. Okay, so for people listening who are maybe newer to Bitcoin, what's the core advice from Morgan?
Well, first off, she kind of repeats that still early idea, which can be comforting if you feel like you missed the initial boat.
Yeah, definitely.
But the main thing she stresses is that personal finance is, well, personal. It's not a hard science with one right answer for everyone.
Right.
So you need to start with your goals, your situation, not just jump in thinking about Bitcoin's potential price.
That makes sense. She warns against that mindset of feeling you have to be 100% in Bitcoin right away
Yeah.
without thinking about your actual life.
Exactly. She gave a great example. Someone starting a business, even if they're a huge Bitcoiner, they still need reliable fiat cash flow. You can't pay all your suppliers in Bitcoin yet.
Good point. Reality check.
And knowing what you need financially, short-term and long-term, actually makes writing out Bitcoin's volatility easier. You're less likely to panic sell if you know your immediate needs are covered.
Okay, let's talk pitfalls then.
Yeah.
Morgan mentioned overaccumulation as a big one for Bitcoiners.
Is it weird?
Oh, yeah, how can you have too much Bitcoin?
I know, it sounds counterintuitive, but what she means by overaccumulation is being too exposed, maybe leveraged up, or just not having enough other liquid assets, like cash. Holding tons of Bitcoin, but no cash flow cushion.
Ah, okay. So it's relative to your overall situation.
Precisely. The danger, she explains, is that this can paradoxically force you to sell Bitcoin when you least want to, maybe during a dip just to cover life expenses. So you end up with less Bitcoin long term.
Right, because you were forced to sell low. Okay, that makes sense.
So the key takeaway is build up a cash surplus first. Get that buffer sorted before you go all in on accumulating Bitcoin.
And a huge part of that buffer is the emergency fund, right? The fiat one.
Absolutely critical. Not just a nice to have. It's what stops you from having to liquidate Bitcoin when your car breaks down or the roof leaks.
Yeah.
She also urged caution about borrowing against Bitcoin. The lending market's still a bit Wild West, might involve risks like sharing keys.
Yeah, not ideal.
And definitely avoid buying Bitcoin on high-interest credit cards. That's just asking for trouble.
Oh, man, I can relate to that feeling, though. Buying the dip, feeling great, and then realizing, oops, I spent the grocery money. Not a fun place to be.
Been there. So, okay, how big should that emergency fund be? Morgan says maybe think beyond the simple 3-6 months of expenses rule.
What else should you consider?
Well, several things. If you own a home, she suggests budgeting maybe 1-3% of the purchase price per year just for maintenance and repairs. That adds up.
Good point. Homeownership isn't cheap.
And income stability matters. A freelancer with fluctuating income probably needs a bigger cushion than someone with a steady long-term salary, right?
Makes sense.
Yeah.
More uncertainty needs a bigger buffer.
Your spending habits, too. How easily could you tighten your belt in an emergency? If you can cut back significantly, maybe the fund can be slightly smaller. But the main goal, always, is protecting your Bitcoin stack by having that fiat safety net.
So the emergency fund actually supports your Bitcoin position. Okay. This connects to risk tolerance, doesn't it? And how that changes.
Yeah, perfectly. Morgan breaks down risk tolerance into two parts. Your willingness to take risk and your ability to take risk, like absorbing losses.
Willingness and ability.
Right.
And your ability to take risk changes dramatically with life stages. Big life events have a huge impact.
Like getting married, having kids.
Exactly. Those are prime examples. Suddenly your capacity to stomach big financial swings might shrink considerably because you have others depending on you. I know mine did.
Yeah, same here. Definitely changes things. So it comes back to tailoring your Bitcoin allocation. It can't just be about chasing gains. It has to fit your life, your risk ability right now. The goal is a portfolio you can sleep with at night, one that aligns with your values.
Right. Peace of mind is underrated. Okay, let's really focus now on the generational wealth aspect. Using Bitcoin for that long-term, multi-generational goal. Morgan mentioned that famous tweet.
Yes, the how to make your child a millionaire one.
That's the one.
Yeah, the idea of putting, say, $1,000 into Bitcoin when a child is born, holding those million sats, and banking on, well, significant dollar devaluation by the time they're 50.
It's partly tongue-in-cheek, maybe,
Mhm.
especially compared to the S&P 500, whatever.
Sure, there's speculation baked in, but it does highlight that core idea of ultra long-term holding and thinking about Bitcoin's potential beyond just our own lifetimes.
And she shifts the focus, right? Away from just the fiat value and towards the intrinsic value of the sats themselves.
Exactly. The stack is the goal. And she emphasizes getting basic estate planning done now, even if you don't feel wealthy. Simple things, like naming guardians for kids if the worst happens. That's crucial.
So important.
But, she argues, real generational wealth transfer isn't just about wills and trusts. It's about passing down values, communicating why this matters, how to handle wealth responsibly, not just locking it up with rigid rules.
That's a deeper point. How do you actually do that? Pass on values.
She gives practical ideas, like involve kids in age-appropriate chats about family finances, give them small responsibilities, help them build financial literacy and a sense of, stewardship.
Start early. Build good habits.
Yeah. And she warns against spoiling kids, even if you have the means. Overindulgence can actually hurt them by preventing them from learning vital life skills and developing a work ethic. She even uses this analogy about old empires, like the Persians.
Okay.
How decadence without strong underlying values often leads to decline. A bit historical, but makes the point.
Interesting analogy. Okay, so shifting back to the present, how do you talk to people who aren't on board with Bitcoin yet, the pre-coiners?
First step, according to Morgan, figure out if they're actually open-minded.
Good point. No use banging your head against a wall.
Exactly. If someone's just completely closed off, maybe save your energy. But if they are open, tailor the conversation. Where are they starting from? Do they get basic money concepts, or are they already seeing issues like inflation?
Right now, with costs going up and all the talk about money printing, that might be an easier entry point, maybe.
Could be. She suggests framing Bitcoin as a form of long-term savings. Compare it to traditional investments, but also point out their risks, company failures, counterparty risk, that sort of thing.
And patience is key, right? People don't usually flip overnight.
Definitely. Adoption takes time. Small steps are normal. And, it's tough because often the best time to buy, value-wise, is during a bear market.
Yeah, when everyone's scared.
Exactly. So recommending it then feels counterintuitive and can be emotionally difficult for the person hearing it.
So empathy is huge. Remember your own journey.
Totally. Ask questions, understand their worries. Don't just lecture. None of us started out knowing everything about Bitcoin.
True. Okay, what about the really tricky one? Talking to your spouse or maybe other close family members, trying to orange pill them.
Ah, yes. Morgan's advice here is basically tread carefully, don't be aggressive, don't push constantly.
Yeah, that usually backfires.
Big time. Focus on loving communication. Actually listen to their concerns. Answer their questions patiently. Remember that wealth isn't everything. Pushing Bitcoin so hard that it damages the relationship, that's not a win.
Good perspective. Financial harmony matters too.
And again, Bitcoin's a long game. There's probably no need for some immediate life-altering decision today. Let it breathe.
Okay, final stretch. Let's talk about the why. Why accumulate Bitcoin in the first place?
Right. Morgan brings it back to fundamentals. People don't really want money. They want what money enables.
Freedom, security, experiences.
Exactly. Freedom, security, time with loved ones, pursuing passions. And she warns against putting your whole life on hold just to stack more sats for some distant future. Find a balance.
Don't forget to live now.
Precisely. She shared that saying, money makes you more of who you are.
I like that.
It means accumulating wealth won't magically fix personal flaws or create happiness. You need to work on yourself, develop your values, figure out what matters alongside building wealth.
Makes sense. She mentioned common regrets people have near the end of life.
Yeah, things like not spending enough time with family and friends, not pursuing things they were passionate about. It puts the Bitcoin accumulation into a broader life context.
It really does.
And she finished with this really powerful question she uses in life planning. If you learned you only had, say, 5 or 10 years left to live, how would that change your priorities now?
Wow, that's a heavy question.
It is, But thinking about it, even hypothetically, can help clarify what's truly important in shorter time frames too, like the next year or the next 5 years. It helps you live more intentionally.
That's a fantastic point to reflect on. This has been incredibly valuable, really digging into Morgan Rochard's insights. Thank you so much for walking us through this.
My pleasure. It was a great conversation to dissect. Thanks for having me.
Absolutely. And for everyone listening, if you want to find Morgan online, she's on Twitter. It's spelled MorganeRochard.
Right. Her financial planning firm is Origin Wealth Advisors. That's originori.com. And the Bitcoin consulting side is moneyowners.com.
And she has that podcast too, right?
Wow.
With Pierre.
Yeah, Bitcoin for Advisors. Definitely worth checking out. Plus, there's the Bitcoin Financial Advisors Network, bitcoinfinancialadvisors.com, I believe. If you're looking for advisors specifically in this space, great resource.
Awesome. We really hope this deep dive gave you something useful, maybe even just one small thing you can think about or act on. Morgan was kind enough to say people could reach out if they make a change based on her advice.
Yeah, absolutely.
So thank you again for tuning in. The Deep Dive.
And hey, if you got value from this, maybe consider supporting the show. You could boost us on Fountain, leave a review somewhere, or just share it with a friend who might be interested.
It's always funny to think, right? There are so many Bitcoin podcasts, but only 21 million Bitcoin. I really appreciate you spending your valuable time with us.
We do. Until the next deep dive, stay free.